It's time now for the political analysis of Fromm and Fuller. Al Fromm, former political advisor to President Bill Clinton, and Craig Fuller, former political advisor to both Presidents Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush. Good morning, all. Al, we start with you. There was an election on Tuesday, certainly in the state of Maryland. I always think it's good form to come back to you all after those kind of events. What was your takeaway, not only in Maryland, but in the other states that you were watching?
To be honest, I didn't find anything unexpected in this race. I focused mostly on Maryland. I guess the only thing, other issue of any importance was that the Republicans formally nominated Governor Justice in West Virginia for the Senate, and he's almost certain going to win that Senate seat, which would bring the Senate into a 50-50 tie if no other changes in party control took place. But that was clearly expected. It's why Joe Manchin dropped out of the race, decided not to run for re-election because he didn't think he could win that race. Other than that, there was nothing that I saw particularly surprising in Maryland. Obviously, in the presidential, both Biden and Trump were unopposed. They both won big. Biden won with 86%, a little over 86%. Trump won with 80%. I'm sure Craig will talk about the Haley 20%, which continues to bug him. I think the most significant thing, though, in Maryland to keep in mind as we go through this election season is nearly twice as many people voted in the Democratic primary as in the Republican primary. So the presidential is not a contest in the general election. A lot of attention paid to the Senate race. Angela Alsobrooks, the Georges County executive, won big, I think surprisingly big. I must say that a couple of weeks before the election, I talked to my friend Steny Hoyer, and he told me that I would be surprised at how well she does, that he considered her a protege, and that he encouraged her to run. And as it turned out, she won with 54%, and her lead continues to expand as the vote gets counted. She won in all the big areas. She won in the suburban Washington counties, Montgomery, and overwhelmingly in her own county, Prince George's. She won in Baltimore City. She won in Baltimore County, and she won in Anne Arundel County. And anybody who takes those 5 places is going to win Maryland pretty easily. But I was surprised because she ran against David Trune, who ran a good campaign, had a lot of money, unlimited money, and built up a very big early lead with his ad blitz. I'm reminded actually of something that the late, great, crazy Pat Caddell, the old Democratic pollster, told me in the I think it was in the 1976 Maryland Senate race when Joe Tidings was trying to come back, and he had a 20-point lead over Paul Sarbanes. And Caddell said, if he doesn't have a 40-point lead by 4 or 5 weeks out, he's going to lose. And sure enough, he had a 20-point lead, and Sarbanes won by 20 points. So, in a Democratic primary, Alsobrooks, who is a very attractive candidate, I think, has an enormous advantage because the 2 most important constituencies in a Democratic Party are African Americans in a primary, are African Americans and educated women. And she did well with both of those, obviously. Larry Hogan will probably make it a competitive race, even though I'm not actually sure of that. He won easily in the Democratic primary, but I think he won. I was sort of surprised that he only won 62% of the vote. I'm sorry, in the Republican primary. I'm surprised he only won 62% of the vote because he ran against a guy who I've known from my days in Montgomery County, an absolute gadfly who runs every election, named Robin Ficker. Ficker decided he was going to embrace Trump, and he got 30% of the vote. And what that probably tells me, Craig knows his party better than I do, but is that all those Trump voters may not just rally to Hogan in the fall the way they might have at another time. Now, Hogan has his appeal is common sense compromise, and I'd say that's an attractive appeal in a general election, except in this election, I don't think it's going to work unless he pledges to support Chuck Schumer for majority leader and agrees to at the caucus with the Democrats. Because for two reasons. One, he's going to have a terribly big uphill fight if Biden wins by 25 or 30 points. He won by 33 last time. And second, the Democrats are already making this race a fight for control of the Senate. And with issues like abortion on the line, I just think that's a pretty powerful argument, and it's going to be a lot harder for Hogan to overcome because he can't say that he's not going to vote for the Republican control of the Senate. The only other thing I'd say is in our district, my district in Annapolis, the 3rd district, we have a new star was born. Sarah Elfreth, a young woman, state senator, who's really a terrific young woman, has been involved from time to time in a group that was a outgrowth of the DLC called the New Deal, of the brightest young legislators around the country. Won again unexpectedly big. She beat Harry Dunn, the Capitol Police officer, who had all the support of National Democrats and MSNBC and a lot of stuff like that. But she beat him very decisively in a 22 and got 35% in a 22-person race, which I thought was pretty impressive. So I guess nothing really unexpected. I'm looking forward to the Senate race, but I really believe that barring some unforeseen circumstance, our next senator is going to be an historic senator, the first black woman from Maryland ever to serve in the United States Senate. It's going to be Angela Alsobrooks.
Craig, that Haley vote keeps on showing up.
It certainly does. And sort of the same 2 points that have been made before, which is a problem for Donald Trump, and that is the 20% of the Republicans who show up to vote or cast a ballot by mail vote against him. But as big, or maybe bigger, is the fact that once again in the state of Maryland, fewer Republicans cast ballots in this primary than they did in 2016 or 2020. And that says to me that Republicans, despite what they might be telling the pollsters, are not coming out to vote for their candidate. Maybe they think it doesn't matter, but typically the Trump supporter has been, a very high propensity kind of voter, and they're not coming out. And we've seen it in Wisconsin and Indiana, and so that continues. Now, that does not make a difference. I completely agree with Al. Does not make a difference when it comes to the November election with respect to the presidency. Biden is going to carry Maryland. It does matter for Hogan, because if at the top of the ticket, if the Republican candidate, Trump, presumably, can't bring voters out, Hogan needs every single Republican vote in order to win. And as Al suggested, there was some sign of weakness in this Republican primary for Hogan, which is not surprising. But those Republicans need to come back to him, and they need to come out to vote. And I think there's a very real question whether they will or not. However, the big story for me is about the man whose name was not on the ballot, Governor Wes Moore. Governor Wes Moore had the opportunity to let the voters decide in a Democratic primary which candidate to put forth for the general election. He got in early. He got in behind Alsobrooks and clearly decided she was the best choice going forward in November, and was up against this $62 million+ machine of David Trone, who was challenging her. But it turns out that a popular Democratic governor, Wes Moore, made a big difference and really, I think, drove, if not the victory, certainly the margin of victory that she enjoyed. Because of what happened in West Virginia, which is going to flip in all likelihood to a Republican seat, there's more significance than ever on what happens in the race here in Maryland for that U.S. Senate seat. And it could actually determine whether there's a Democratic or Republican majority in the Senate. But there is no way that Governor Wes Moore, if you saw him on election night saying we've won the battle, now the war begins, there is no way Wes Moore is going to allow, if he can help it, is going to allow a Republican to win that seat. And he's a big winner if he can deliver a Democrat to the Senate from Maryland, like Alsobrooks, but he would lose a lot if he failed to do that. And I think he's going to be in an all-out campaign. Hogan has also never run on a ballot with Trump on the ballot. He's never run against Wes Moore. So the attributes that Hogan has, which is well liked as a Republican governor, I just don't see how they're going to be sufficient. So I'll side with my friend Al, and if we're making predictions at this point, I think Maryland's going to send Alsobrooks to the Senate.
Hey, Al, were you as surprised as I was that Biden and Trump teams agreed on a format for debates coming up? Usually with Donald Trump, it's always at the last moment whether he does these kind of debates.
The answer is, when I think about it, it's not really very surprising. But let me go back to two things that Craig said for just 1 second. He talked about Wes Moore's endorsement. I always believe that endorsement ads are not very effective late in a campaign. I want to see the candidate on closing for himself or herself. That wasn't the case. Wes Moore's endorsement ad seemed to put Alsobrooks over the top, so I was wrong about that. And the other thing just to remember about Larry Hogan, he's always been at the top of the ticket because governor's running an off year in Maryland. Mm-hmm. And he's going to have to be on the Trump ticket. And that's, that can help him in no way. Now, about the debates, there are a couple things that are interesting. One is the early date. I think that had to come because half the ballots would have been counted or been cast before the commission's debates were even taking place. Early voting starts in September, and so by doing the debate in June and then debate in early September, at least it'll be before people start voting, and it probably will have some impact. Look, the reason I'm not really surprised in the end that this happened, I may have been surprised to see Biden get on television yesterday, but I suspected in the end it would happen is because both of the candidates really need the debates. Peggy Noonan had this wonderful column. The candidates may not think so, but she had a column on Friday where she had a line, and I'm paraphrasing, so it's not exactly the way she said it. She said, but the choice is between Biden, who most voters think is too frail and maybe slipping, and Trump, who they think is too crazy. Well, both of them have to change that perception. And, I think Trump believes that if he gets on stage with Biden, he's strong and Biden's weak, and he's going to show that. And Biden wants to get Trump out there talking. He wants him to say all the crazy things he can say. I mean, I think Biden's campaign probably thinks they've been hurt because of these trials, because Trump has been kept off the trail. Trump doesn't go on the trail on Wednesday anyway, because I think his campaign wants to keep him off the trail, and as long as he can play victim at the trial and whine and about how unfair things are, he probably thinks he's doing better than go out and saying crazy things. But so both of them need it. I mean, Biden wants to show that Trump is too crazy to be president, and Trump wants to show that Biden's too weak and frail to be president. The other thing I'd say, it's probably an indication that despite all the happy talk, the Biden campaign is probably worried about what they're seeing in the polls. If they thought they were ahead and things were going hunky-dory, they wouldn't rush him out to debate. I mean, because, one of the things we talked about before is one of the things Biden, just give you an example. I'm on the Jewish mailing list for the White House, and so I get this long email from the Jewish liaison with a statement on Mideast policy, which looked pretty good, by Jake Sullivan. And at the end of it says, "This is the president's policy." Well, what I wanted to hear was the president making that statement, okay? Mm-hmm. I want the president out there on television, telling us exactly what he thinks. And so for Biden to go out and get in debates when they keep him from the Super Bowl, it probably means they're a little nervous about where things are going. And he wants to change the dynamic of the race. And I think the other thing, both of them want to keep RFK Jr. out of the race. There's now some dispute about who he hurts more. But look, neither of those candidates want to take the chance that he's going to hurt them more than the other guy. And so they both, I think, would like to have a one-on-one, or at least I know Biden wants to have a one-on-one because he probably thinks there's an anti-Trump majority, and he has to get every anti-Trump vote to win. And I think the criteria they're using is the right one. You have to have whatever standing in the polls, but also have a possibility of winning. And that's important because right now RFK Jr. is far from being on enough states to get 272 or 70 electoral votes. So that's not surprising either. So we'll see. I mean, I think the most interesting thing is if it works out the way it looks like it's going to. The first debate on CNN is going to be in a studio without an audience, and I think the last time that happened was in the Kennedy-Nixon debates in 1960. Right. And there's no doubt that first Kennedy-Nixon debate made a big difference, and I think Biden's hoping the same thing will happen this time.
Greg, you have the last word this week.
Well, briefly, I think, first of all, Al's points are right on target as far as I'm concerned. There were going to be presidential debates. There's no question about that. They simply could not get from here to November without one or two or maybe three. I think President Biden and his team deserve credit for kind of surprising us in a way, not because of a debate, but because of the way it came out and the challenge came out. He looked pretty good. He got a few zingers in there and actually caught Trump on his day off in court having to grapple with this story, and Trump immediately came out before his people even had a chance to get into the negotiation. He couldn't resist saying he would accept, of course, and he got his zingers out. So we're going to have these debates. The part of the story that I want to share is a little bit of a blast from the past, and I say to the Presidential Debate Commission, may you rest in peace. It was in 1988, when I'm sitting in my office as Chief of Staff to Vice President Bush, that a friend of mine from a university called and said, I just wanted to check with you because we're so excited to be hosting the first presidential debate, and we're laying all this cable, and it's rather expensive, but we haven't heard from anybody in either of the campaigns. And I said, I don't know what you're talking about. Well, they'd cut a deal with this newly formed Presidential Debate Commission. Friends of ours, Al and I know the people behind it. Basically, my view, charitable view, is that they weren't involved in any presidential campaign, so they had to invent some way to get involved in the process. And since 1988, they have been involved with this commission. I told my friend at the university, by the way, that there was no way we were coming to their campus on that date to do a debate. And I immediately got a call, of course, from my friend Frank Fahrenkopf going, what do you mean you're not coming? And I said, Frank, these are too important to let you negotiate on our behalf. You're not even associated with our campaign. I might add Jim Baker felt the same way and probably wasn't as kind to Frank as I was. But this has been going on for a long time, and they turned it into some sort of a gladiator-like contest. Motorcades arriving at the arena, packed crowd cheering, and that has absolutely nothing to do with a set of skills an individual needs to make good judgment and bring experience to the table as President of the United States. And yet we witness these contests for these many years. So I'm frankly glad that we've got a couple of debates on the schedule. I'm glad that it's not the kind of circus that the Debate Commission was creating for us on every 4 years. And we'll see how it turns out. I do think that the one element of this, by going early, that's important is I do think it will tend to get people to focus on the two candidates that running in this contest, and that's a good thing, because I think, and it goes back to the earlier point with so many people not coming out in primaries to vote, I think people are kind of tired of what they're hearing, and until they can see these two individuals sitting and having some kind of a conversation or a debate, they're not going to pay much more attention. And I think it's a good thing to bring a little bit more visibility and focus on what's at stake in this election.
Well, we do have to leave it there. Al Fromm, Craig Fuller, thank you so much indeed. We will see you next week.